Rosalynn Carter, mental health activist, humanitarian, and former First Lady, dies at 96. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we have a truly inspiring and deeply heartfelt video to share with you all. We'll be discussing the incredible legacy of Rosalynn Carter, a remarkable mental health activist, and her last touching letter before she passed away. Prepare to be moved and inspired by her unwavering dedication to improve the lives of those affected by mental health disorders. Before diving into Rosalynn Carter's final letter, let's take a moment to appreciate her impactful contributions. Rosalynn Carter, who as First Lady worked tirelessly on behalf of mental health reform and professionalized the role of the president's spouse, died Sunday at the age of 96 according to the Carter Center. Rosalynn Carter passed away peacefully with family by her side at her home in Plains, Georgia, the center said in the statement. Rosalynn was my equal partner in everything I ever accomplished, her husband, former President Jimmy Carter said. She gave me wise guidance and encouragement when I needed it. As long as Rosalynn was in the world, I always knew somebody loved and supported me. The Carter Center announced Friday that the former First Lady has entered hospice care. She was diagnosed with dementia in May. Her husband became home hospice care in February following a series of hospital stays. Jimmy Carter was defeated in a landslide by Ronald Reagan 4 years after being elected. His single term in the White House included forging a rare peace agreement between Israel and Egypt that continues to this day, but it was also marked by soaring inflation and the Iran hostage crisis. Through it all, Rosalynn was by his side and often whispering in his ear. The Carters redefined and revolutionized the post-presidency, and through their joint efforts, they worked on world peace and human rights on behalf of the Carter Center, a non-governmental Atlanta-based organization founded to wage peace, fight disease, and build hope. First Lady Joe Biden celebrated Rosalynn Carter's life on Sunday, telling service members and their families at a Naval Station Norfolk holiday event the former First Lady Rosalynn Carter has passed away, and she was well known for her efforts on mental health and caregiving and women's rights. And so, I hope that during the holidays, you'll include the Carter family in your prayers, Joe Biden said. President Joe Biden praised the Carter family while speaking to reporters after the holiday event. They're really an incredible family because they brought so much grace to the office, he said. Former President George W. Bush and former First Lady Laura Bush similarly praised Rosalynn Carter as a woman of dignity and strength. There was no greater advocate of President Carter, and their partnership set a wonderful example of loyalty and fidelity. She leaves behind an important legacy in her work to designate mental health. We join our fellow citizens in sending our condolences to President Carter and their family, the pair said in a joint statement. After leaving the White House, the couple traveled to hotspots around the world, including visits to Cuba, Sudan, and North Korea, monitoring elections and working to eradicate Guinea from worm disease and other neglected tropical diseases. Jimmy Carter won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. The Carter Center is a shared legacy. She's been there digging lifelines right next to him, said the Carters' friend Jill Stuckey, a leader at Maranatha Baptist Church where both Carters attended and where Jimmy Carter taught Sunday school. Rosalynn Carter's most lasting individual legacy will be her efforts to diminish the stigma attached to people with mental illness and her fight to parity and access for mental health treatment. She also devoted her time to the Rosalynn Carter Institute of Caregiving at her alma mater, Georgia Southwestern State University, to help families and professional caregivers living with disabilities and illnesses. In 1999, then-President Bill Clinton presented both Carters with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the country's highest civilian honor. He said they had done more good things for more people in more places than any other couple on earth. The Steel Magnolia. Rosalynn and Jimmy Carter shared what many would call a true American story and a genuine lifelong partnership. In 2015, when the 39th president announced his brain cancer diagnosis, he was asked of which accomplishment he was the proudest. He did not hesitate to say that it was marrying Rosalynn. That's the pinnacle of my life. He shared as another point the secret of his enduring marriage. Rosalynn has been the foundation for my entire enjoyment of life. First of all, it's best to choose the right woman, which I did. And secondly, we give each other space to do our own things, he told Jake Trapper on CNN's The Lead in July 2015. It was likely that Eleanor Rosalynn Smith would cross paths with Jimmy Carter in their small hometown of Plains, Georgia. They grew up at a time when candy cost a nickel and everyone in town knew one another. Occasionally, someone would open a restaurant, but it would never last very long, Rosalynn wrote in her memoir, First Lady from Plains. Rosalynn did not grow up with much money. Her mother was a dressmaker and her father was an automobile mechanic who died from cancer when she was 13. She helped raise her younger sisters and considered her father's death the end of her childhood. The Carters met through Jimmy's sister, Ruth, who was Rosalynn's closest friend. When Rosalynn saw a photo of Carter on Ruth's bedroom wall, she thought, he was the most handsome man I'd ever seen. She even asked Ruth if she could take his photograph home with her. Both devout Southern Baptists, Jimmy and Rosalynn met after a church meeting and soon began dating. They were married not long after his graduation from the Naval Academy when she was 18 and he was 21. When we got married, I think I was kin to everybody that Jimmy wasn't, Rosalynn wrote in her memoir. Once we got married, we were kin to everybody in town. As the wife of naval officer, Rosalynn moved frequently and she managed to a large household. The Carters had 3 children in quick succession: John William, the year after the wedding in Norfolk, James Earl III, less than 3 years later in Hawaii, and Donald Jeffrey in New London, Connecticut in 1952. Their only daughter, Amy Lynn, was born in 1967, a year after Carter lost his first bid for Georgia governor. Jimmy Carter had been accepted to an elite nuclear submarine program but resigned his commission in Schenectady, New York after his father died so that they could return to Plain in 1953 to look after the family farm. He decided to relocate the family without asking Rosalynn's opinion. Rosalynn was so furious that she refused to talk to him the entire drive south. After that, Jimmy Carter said he consulted with his wife on all major decisions. Later nicknamed the Steel Magnolia by the press, a reference she did not mind, saying once in an interview with C-SPAN that steel is tough and magnolia is southern. Rosalynn was naturally shy and her knees would knock together when she had to give a speech in the early days of her husband's political career in the 1960s. But by the time he announced his presidential campaign in December 1974, she was a seasoned politician herself. Describing her transformation from housewife to political partner, Carter H. Stewart Eisenstadt said, "This shy woman blossomed in the most wonderful way." It was not long before she would number the president's jokes so that he would not repeat any of them to the same group. She even started taking memory classes to remember faces and names and typed thank you letters to people her husband had met on the campaign trail. She stayed up until the early hours of the morning to work on her speeches. Former President Donald Trump made specific note of the Carters' long marriage in a statement Sunday praising her years of service to the country. "Melania and I join all Americans in mourning the loss of Rosalynn Carter. She was a devoted First Lady, a great humanitarian, a champion for mental health, and a beloved wife to her husband of 77 years, President Carter," Trump posted on social media. First Lady from Plains. Carter ran for president as a Washington outsider seeking to distance himself from the paranoia and cynicism of former President Richard Nixon. He had a group of Georgia volunteers known as the Peanut Brigade campaign for him. Rosalynn hit the road with a vengeance, and when she arrived in a small town, she scoped out the tallest antenna and headed there, the local television and radio stations, to offer herself up for an interview. In her memoir, she wrote that some of the smaller stations with fewer employees had no idea who Jimmy Carter was. Rosalynn came prepared, carrying a list of 5 or 6 questions she wanted to ask. 9 times out of 10, she said, the station used the questions she suggested. "I was getting my messages across," she said in her memoir. For 18 months during the presidential campaign, she went to 105 communities in Iowa and spent 75 days in Florida in support of her husband. "My nervousness began to despair when I realized people seemed pleased to meet me, though I still had trouble with a dry throat and sometimes a trembling voice when I approached an interview or a speech," she wrote in her memoir. Carter won a narrow victory, capturing just 51% of the popular vote and 297 electoral votes to defeat President Gerald Ford, who had assumed the presidency upon Nixon's resignation in 1974. Rosalynn Carter, mental health activist, last words before she died. Now let's turn our attention to the poignant and powerful last words spoken by Rosalynn Carter before her passing. "I go to seek a great perhaps. That's why I'm going. So I don't have to wait until I die to start seeking a great perhaps." Her ability to leave an impactful message, even in her final moments, truly reflects her unwavering dedication to mental health advocacy.